All right, welcome back to the show, everyone here at the Awaken Avoidant. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with Miss Steph Charlton.
Mm-hmm.
Charlton, right?
Charlton, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I asked Tina earlier. She kind of confused me. Charlton, but I
No
just want to make
S,
sure.
yeah, just Charlton.
Yeah, Tina's kind of goofy. But either way, so today's story, and thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I just want to commend you for the vulnerability, being able to step out and share, just to let people know that, we're all bonded by common experiences, and in the moments when you feel you're the furthest away from people, we do have these things that bond us. And just you sharing and letting people know what you're going through and how people can support you, your friends, because like no one tells you how to deal with these losses. We don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to deal with these losses. No one teaches you, no one says anything about it. And then when you get to a point where you have people, friends losing people, you just don't know how to support them or what to do or what to say or to have empathy, sympathy, even me, like I reached out to you and I just kind of, just send like
Yeah.
a light message out. But, me personally, like the last thing I ever want to say is, hey, I know what you're going through because, I don't technically know what you're
Well,
going through.
everybody's stories are unique, but my story technically is very far from unique. Addiction and not myself, but addiction and loss, and you know, my friend group in general has gone through a lot of loss.
Yeah.
So I've been on both ends of that, of
Mhm.
not knowing what to say, how to support,
Yeah.
how to help the family members, how to all that stuff. And then I've been on the receiving end, and what would piss me off or what would, like trigger me, or there's just so many different grief in itself. Everybody grieves differently. So it's just very touchy. And then people get nervous and stop asking, or, it's all over the place.
Yeah, there's a little bit of like discomfort amongst people and just not knowing what to do. So, we appreciate you for coming out and just being vulnerable and letting us all know what your experience has been like, is like. And to me, I wanted to share your story and I appreciate you again for coming because it resonates with me, obviously, because I have a sibling and there had been a point in my life where your reality could have been my reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be for everyone because, we're all just afflicted by the same things, basically.
Yep.
So, yeah, your story touched me. And when I reached out, you said something that specifically that I liked. And, because I wanted to hear your story. And you said, I'm ready to tell her story, which really, that got me. And I was like, I need to hear this. And, I just appreciate you for coming out. And I feel like your story is one of, triumph, overcome, resilience, and just moving forward in the face of tremendous adversity and doing so while having to love yourself, your daughter, and those around you. And I imagine that that has been a tremendous challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
So just for being here, I just want to commend you just for smiling,
Yeah.
any of it.
Well, you kind of have to,
Yeah.
when it's so cliche, but, the world keeps spinning, the sun keeps coming up, it's like you have to keep going, especially when you're a parent,
Yeah.
so it's like, I'm not only going through it myself, I'm going through it with my daughter who lost her aunt,
Yeah.
so it's not just me, I'm going through it with my mom who buried a child, it's like I think it helps me being the strong one.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not necessarily the best way to cope with things,
Mm-hmm.
but I tend to throw myself into taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think that's been a hard part of trying to take care of everybody else and not taking care of myself. But, you work through it and every day is different.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start at the end and we'll go back to the beginning. What exactly happened? What was the day that you What was the day that you lost your sister?
So she passed away July 28th of 2022.
Okay.
So it's been about a year and a half now. It wasn't sudden, which sounds weird to say. We always kind of thought it would be. You know, when you deal with a loved one who's an addict, you kind of prepare yourself for that phone call. You know, that phone call that they overdosed or that they, you know, got into an accident or any of those kind of things. You kind of mentally prepare yourself. You don't actually, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you
no, I know.
prepare yourself,
Yeah.
but it's, you know,
No, I
then
know.
it happens and you're like, yeah, no, I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, you could never be.
Right. So it actually started probably, it was like May, early May. She thought she had COVID and she was sick. And I got a call on a Sunday morning from my mom that the ambulance came to pick her up. And I was like, well, why? Like, what? That's weird. And she was like, she's having a lot of back pain. She says she can't walk. You know, I was like, why didn't you just drive her? That's weird. But so the ambulance came and got her and she went to the hospital. And I was like, all right, well, she's probably just really dehydrated or, you know, she had COVID real bad, like whatever. By the end of that day, they basically told us she was going to die. It was an infection, and we didn't know details at the time, but she had a blood infection and she was septic, and the blood infection had gone to her heart. So her heart valve basically had a cluster of infection. So every time her heart pumped, it would pump it to the rest of her body.
Oh, okay.
So the infection was going
Everywhere. Okay.
So they basically told, she was by the end of the day, she was in a coma. Like, it was so quick.
Whoa.
So we're like, okay, what does this mean? We talked to a cardiologist. They told us basically, like, they have to get the infection under control. If they can get the infection under control, they'll have to do a heart valve replacement, like a heart valve transplant or whatever they call it. So, I mean, they're basically telling us, like, it's not looking good. Like, to be able to get it under control and all that stuff was just almost unheard of. So we went from thinking she had COVID to not even 24 hours later, she's, you know, in a coma in the ICU, and it was insane. So we end up, the next couple of days were kind of touchy. They were just kind of pumping her with antibiotics and hoping for the best. And I was actually supposed to go to the Poconos with like a bunch of my friends or whatever. And I hadn't told anybody what was going on except for, you know, my best friend. I told her and basically was like, look, like, nobody really knows what's happening, but it's not looking good. If I can't go for any reason, I'm going to send my daughter with her because my daughter didn't know. So I'm going to send her up to the Poconos, whatever the case may be. So Thursday, we get to the hospital and she's still unconscious. She hasn't woken up, anything like that. We meet up with the infectious disease doctor and they were like, yeah, the infection's gone. She's good to go. And we're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, what? We walked in and she was awake and we're like, okay. Like, so then she was asking for water and I walk out and I asked the doctor, you know, is she allowed to have water? She's asking for water. And the doctor was like, she's asking for water? She's awake? Like, her doctor didn't even know. It happened like as we walked in the room. And she, they had told us at this point that the infection had caused mini strokes as well. So we weren't sure if she was going to be coherent, if she was going to remember anything, any of that stuff. So at this point, she was awake and coherent enough, and they basically said the infection was under control enough in her blood. They were going to continue with antibiotics for however long until they decide to do the surgery. So basically, fast forward, she's in the hospital for a couple weeks, and she eventually gets the heart surgery. It was supposed to be one valve. They told us it was going to be like a 3-hour surgery. It was not going to be super long. My mom was at the hospital waiting. Hours go by. Then they were like, oh, well, we didn't get a chance to start yet, blah, 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 whatever. So we end up We end up not hearing anything from them for like a really long time. So at this point, my mom, like, it's almost at this point probably 7 o'clock at night. Now the surgery started, it was supposed to start at like 8 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So they told us a 3 hour surgery, 3 to 4 hours, and it's now nighttime.
Yeah.
My mom is freaking out. She can't get a hold of anybody. Like, we think she died on the table. Like, we don't know what's happening. Like, can somebody please tell us? I talked to 100 nurses. I felt bad. I was yelling at people and stuff, but finally we get a hold of someone, and they basically said that there was a lot more infection in there than they thought. So she had to get 2 valves replaced, and they were pretty big ones, like the more serious ones. But the surgery was successful, and she was okay. Another, bullet dodged. So then they basically just said she was going to have to be on antibiotics again. To keep that going, she'd have to get rehabs and things like that and whatever. Now the problem is my sister had been sober for a good year, but the infection happened because she relapsed. When she had COVID, she couldn't get to the clinic that she was going to, and she ended up relapsing. That's how we found all that out. So she had gotten a skin infection from using again.
Okay.
Obviously, when you get heart surgery and big surgeries like that, they're giving you opioids. So her being sober was over and done with, you know what I mean, at this point. So it was a lot of, it was hard. I mean, she was still on, the, all the medicine and all the, it was rough. But so then they basically told us that if the infection comes back, there's no fixing it again. If the infection comes back, it will kill her, and there's nothing we can do about it. So basically, like, she needs a lifestyle change. She's going to have, heart problems. She's going to have all these different things. Like, she could never use again, or she will die. At this point, they put her into like a facility, basically, because she needed intravenous antibiotics. So they had a port. Now, you can't send a heroin addict home with an open port. You know what I mean? So she had to basically live in the hospital. So at this point, it's June. She's been in there for 2 months just getting antibiotics. I actually she had left the facility because she had to be on for 6 weeks. So she was just about almost done, and she left the facility. She was going to go right into rehab, and within a couple of days, she wasn't feeling right. She had my mom take her back to the hospital, and the infection was back. So we don't know if there was a couple days in there where she might have used before she was going into to rehab. At that point, it's not like she can detox at home by herself. They just had her pumped with fentanyl and all the things in the hospital from the heart surgery that we don't really know for sure. But the infection was back. I actually got the call. I was at Tina's house for her birthday, and nobody knew still. I hadn't told anybody what was happening. Nobody knew she was in the hospital. And I got the call that she was back in the hospital and the infection was back, and they didn't know if it was in her heart yet. So this was early July. And then by, I think it was the 3rd, it was like 4th of July weekend, they said it was back in her heart. And the only thing they could do is continue the antibiotics and hope for the best. But we had already basically been told that it wasn't going to go well. So another month, and, it was not working. So by, I don't know the specific date, but it was I spent the day with her in the hospital Saturday. And then Sunday morning, we got a call that something drastic happened in her body and it was shutting down, and that we had to come right away, basically. And when we got there, they talked to us about putting her on hospice. And she was on like a machine that was like breathing for her and like all these things. And it was awful to see it, but, so we went and we talked to hospice, and we decided to put her on hospice and, you know, said our goodbyes, and didn't know how long it was going to last. But at this point, she was unconscious. So, you know, we had our time with her, and we eventually went home. Me and my mom were sitting on the back porch crying and drinking and, you know, all the things. And we get a call from the hospital, and both of us just kind of look at each other like, this is it. Like, they're telling us she passed. And we answer the phone, and the doctor's like, hi, is this Kelly's mom? And my mom's like, yeah. And she was like, Kelly's awake. She wants to talk to you. And we're like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, she's awake? How does that happen? We just put her on hospice. Like, we took her off all the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they basically just made her comfortable. And
It's like superhuman.
it was so weird. Like, it was crazy. So, of course, you know, we rushed to get to the hospital, and we go and we talk to her. And of course, the doctor that was on call, because at this point it's like 11 o'clock at night. The doctor that didn't know her or whatever was like, wait, she's on hospice? What is she on hospice for? She's 30. Like, you know, she doesn't need to be on hospice, all these things. And asked her, was like, do you want to be on hospice? She was like, well, no. Like, duh, no, I don't want to be on hospice.
Of course not.
And he cut off her DNR bracelet. Like, it was basically like, gave us all this hope of like, did something change?
Yeah.
None of her doctors were there. It was the middle of the night.
Huh.
So we got to talk to her, and she was okay. She was obviously a little out of it, but, you know, we got to have a conversation with her and all that kind of stuff. And by the next morning, I had called my best friend and told her what was happening, and needed her to tell people for me because I couldn't be the one to do it. So by this point, we had got back to the hospital, and we had a big meeting with all of her doctors and everything. And they basically apologized for this doctor giving us some kind of hope, because apparently this is kind of normal. Once they took her body off all the machines and put her on morphine and made her feel comfortable, her body kind of settled, and she was able to, you know, be awake and coherent. So, yeah, we ended up having to put her back on hospice and sign all the paperwork again and do that all over again.
Wow. That is extremely unfortunate.
Yeah. And then, and the hospice was 4 or 5 days long. So.
And then she passed away after.
Yeah. So at this point, you know, family members were coming, and, you know, that Monday that we put her back on hospice, she was sort of like aware of what was happening, but basically just kind of, you know, eyes closed. Like, my one cousin was talking to her and, you know, was telling her a story, and she thought she was asleep, and she had stopped talking. And, you know, my sister, like, without opening her eyes, was like, well, and then what happened? Like, why'd you stop talking? Like, you know what I mean? So she was there, and she was like hearing it, but she wasn't fully there. And then it just declined. By Tuesday, she wasn't waking up anymore. If you like touched her foot, her eyes might flutter. Like, she knew you were there, but she wasn't able to like wake up. I made the decision to stay in the hospital with her. That was hard. My mom couldn't do it, but my best friend Kara came with me. She actually is the one that sings your intro song.
Okay.
So she slept in the hospital with me.
Shout out to her.
Yep. I wouldn't have been able to do it without her. So she came up, and she was by my side from, you know, Monday until, you know, after it happened.
Amazing.
So she slept with me in the hospital, and we, you know, spent a lot of time just kind of back and forth in her room talking to the doctors. They had moved her to a quieter place. And then, you know, by Thursday morning, my mom had come back to the hospital. Me and Kara were going to leave and go, you know, shower and do what we got to do and come back. My mom started having a panic attack. She was just like, you know, what, it's going to sound weird, but like, what is she waiting for? You know, it was kind of like obviously we don't want her to pass, but we don't want, like, is she waiting for something? Is she in pain? Like, what, you know, is something that we need to talk to a doctor about, like, why, you know, she's just kind of there.
Yeah, I get it. And emotionally, you guys are stuck in limbo.
Right.
So
And,
I
we
understand.
want her to be at peace. We don't know if she's in pain. She can't tell us if she's in pain. It was really rough. So
Yeah.
my mom had, a moment. So the nurse said she was going to go get the doctor. And, me and my mom went outside and I asked Kara if she wanted to come. And she was like, no, I'll just wait and then we'll just go when you're done. And me and my mom go outside and, I told my mom, I was like, maybe she just wanted to make sure that we were okay. If it would have happened Sunday, we would have been a wreck. If it would have happened Monday, we would have been a wreck. It was almost like she was giving us time to be at peace with it because she gave us that few days, to kind of be with her and say what we needed to say and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
goodbyes.
yep, by that, literally, as we're having these conversations, a nurse comes out and says, they need you upstairs. And my mom just kind of looks at me. I was like, it's probably just the doctor's there and is ready to talk to us. And we go upstairs and I saw Kara's face and I knew that she had passed. So Kara said within 30 seconds of us walking out of the room, Kelly's eyes opened really wide. And then she took her last breath. But I think sorry.
No, don't be. Take your time.
I don't think she wanted to do it in front of us.
No.
I think she wanted us to not be in the room. So, we said our goodbyes and, it couldn't have went better the way I saw it because we were both there. My mom was terrified the whole time she was at home. I kept thinking what would happen if it happened overnight. I'd have to send somebody to get my mom because she wouldn't be able to drive and I wouldn't be able to drive. And, I slept in that room with her for 3 days. And every time I opened my eyes in the morning, I would jump up like freaking out to see if she was still breathing. And, she waited and Kara held her hand so she wasn't by herself.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be there at the end. I know what you're trying to describe as you lose someone, and it's a terrible thing, and you don't really know how to describe it, but you know that in the moments as you send them off at the end, it's the hardest thing to do in the world, but it's the only place you want to be,
Yeah.
in that moment. So, I commend you for being able to just be there, and, thankfully you were able to be there. Not everyone gets that, we all say we want to be there and we do want to be there, but I've experienced that in my life before and I know it's very hard. It's one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to do.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
It's like, what, are you gonna not be there?
Yeah.
But it's traumatic.
Yeah.
It's like extremely traumatic.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you recall the day?
This was Thursday morning, the 28th.
Okay, of
July.
Okay, so, and her losing her life in that way stems from drug use is the source of it.
Yes.
So we've all lost people or know someone that has unfortunately lost their life in this never-ending war on drugs, and you hear people talk about it from around the country, from Appalachia to the Rust Belt, who has it worse, this, that, and none of that really matters. Like, we're all affected by it. At this point, there's nobody that hasn't been touched by it, unfortunately. And I think, at least me personally, it seems like there's a stigma, attached to people that lose their life that way.
Uh-huh.
Just
like
from
it makes it like their fault.
Something, just it's not a good light. You don't hear, but I would like you to tell the story of who your sister was, because you knew her heart. You knew who she was. Like, we have people in our lives that from the outside in, or if you looked at their rap sheet, you're like, man, this is not a great person, but we all know that that's not true. Some people make bad decisions, bad choices, and they end up here due to their experiences of life or the traumas they carried, you know, whatever got her to that point where that was what she was getting into. But we know that's not the sum of who she is, you know, that's not all of who she is. So can you just take me back to the beginning of where you guys started at? She was your younger
Yeah,
sister?
she
So you're the
was
big sister?
almost 5 years younger than me, so 4.5 years. Um, it was just me and her.
Yeah.
My dad left when I was about 10. So it was just me, my mom, and her. She didn't really remember my dad much, so we had our own separate daddy issues.
Okay.
She had the abandonment. I had, well, we both had the abandonment, but, she didn't really remember him. I did. So we had our own issues with him
Yeah.
and his,
So you both shared that trauma.
right.
Okay.
He had drug issues and was an alcoholic and, all that stuff. So I'm sure that played a part, childhood trauma plus, addiction running in families and all the things. I kind of went the opposite route. I was never, one to try things or do things like that. And
Yeah.
she, I think it's kind of started, wrong crowd kind of thing. And she was young. She was probably like 14, 15 when that started.
Yeah.
But, we had a funny childhood because we did have such a not huge, but a big enough age gap to where we were never in school together.
You said it was 4?
It's 4, almost 5 years.
Okay.
So she's October and missed the cutoff. So like when I was in high school, she was still in middle school.
Okay.
That kind of
Okay,
thing.
so
So like we didn't like run in the same crowds. We didn't like hang out too much, but it was just us. It was just me and her, and it was just me, her, and my mom, and we were extremely close. Probably pretty codependent on each other.
Yeah.
It was like us three against the world kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I miss her. You
Yeah.
know, we had a really good friendship when we got older.
Yeah.
Like when we were grown-ups. But I should, say when she was sober.
Yeah. So the relationship at some points was
Not great.
hard. Okay.
And like I said, it was just me, her, and my mom. And, I was kind of a second parent, like when my dad left, my mom had a couple jobs and I had to be the one to watch her and do homework and cook dinner. And, it was normal for us, but I was more of a authority figure than a friend or sister or,
Which is a trauma in and of itself, having to be a child and parent a child. That is.
Yeah, it was just kind of, how it was for us. And, it's extremely hard to love an addict in general. From point A to point B, loving someone who is struggling with that, it's not just their struggle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was times when I didn't talk to her for months. There was, times when I refused to let her see my daughter. She spent a lot of time in and out of jail, probation violations and all that stuff, or in rehab, or she struggled in this life. But when she was sober, she was my best friend.
Yeah.
We had all the inside jokes, and we had this like basically own language where I could say something and she would instantly, burst out in laughter because she knew exactly what I was talking about. But everybody else in the room's like, what are y'all talking about?
Yeah.
And it was just kind of what it was for us. And, still to this day, I'll hear, something funny. And like, I want to be like, oh my God, remember? And then it was something I had with her that like nobody else really would understand. But
yeah, it's an amazing thing to bond that sibling share. That's why your story resonates with me so much because, I feel it, like I don't know what that feels like because I've never experienced it, but And I try to not imagine because I don't want to put myself there, but I understand how hard that would be, to have to go through that.
Yeah.
So what was her relationship? Did your daughter and her have a strong relationship?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Extremely close.
Yeah.
They were like little kids together. I mean, obviously my daughter was a little kid, but my my sister matched her energy.
Yeah.
And the two of them would gang up on me or just be giggling in the corner. Like they were very close.
Yeah.
And I know that was something that was really hard for Kelly.
Yeah.
And she would try to stay away, and which tended to be like a little light into me knowing what she was doing,
Okay.
because I knew she wouldn't want to be around my daughter. So, she, I could usually tell
Yeah.
when
The
she
signs.
was making bad decisions or whatever. But, I hold a lot of guilt from times when I felt I gave up on her.
Yeah. You felt like you had to distance yourself.
Yeah, I had to.
Yeah.
So I understand why I did it, but, and I know she understands why I did it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just hard, to have to cut off contact with your baby sister, and can't figure out a way to save her, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously it's going to feel that way, and that you carry the guilt now. It's not yours to carry, but I understand it. I too had to do the same thing. But, you had to protect your space, yourself, your peace, and your daughter, so you had to do, and I'm sure she understood that, obviously, so.
Yeah, she definitely did. She was always, extremely understanding of it, which, was even harder. It's like she never held any resentment towards me at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was never mad at me.
Mm.
She was never, like, she just understood.
Yeah,
And, there was times when I was pretty mean to her.
yeah,
And, that was hard.
yeah,
But, you get to a point when you're dealing with an addict. I'd said she started when she was like 15. She died when she was 30. Half of her life, almost half of mine,
yeah,
I dealt with, that craziness, crashing cars and stealing out of my purse and, all the things,
Yeah.
all the what she's done to my mom, like my mom was a nervous wreck all the time.
yeah. And you did the best you could without resources, I assume, because no one tells you what to do in that scenario. No one knows what's best to do, how we can support them, what we can do for them. So you just do what you can within the context of what's happening
Yeah.
at the moment.
Well, and it's hard too because, there's, like we said, there's a stigma
Yeah.
that comes along with that, and there's almost an embarrassment. So people knew, some people knew, but like our family didn't know,
Yeah.
like my mom has brothers and sisters and they didn't know. I mean, come to find out, obviously they knew, but
Yeah.
nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
My mom was embarrassed. I was embarrassed, like if she'd show up to a birthday party and it's obvious
Yeah.
that she's on something, or the scars, you know what I mean? Or, she would fluctuate in weight. So you could always tell when she was using, because she was skin and bones, and people knew. And there's like an embarrassment that comes along with it. I had gotten her a job with me at one point when she was sober, and she was great when she was sober,
Yeah.
but when she wasn't, it's embarrassing. It falls back on me. I got her the job. So I didn't talk to anybody about it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk about it with people. It was, a select few of my friends knew what was happening, but, most of my friends group didn't even know she was sick until she was already on hospice.
Yeah.
And that's something that I feel bad about. I mean, it was obviously, well, it was up to me and my mom whether we wanted to share any of this information. But, you know, I remember getting calls that day, and it was like a gut punch to a lot of people, and a lot of people who knew and loved her.
Yeah.
So it's like she had been in the hospital for months and nobody knew.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people said to me, they were like, you know, how are you dealing with all this stuff and didn't tell anyone? Like, it's, I think back and I don't understand how I did it, because it was, I was going to birthday parties and baby showers and all these different things while she's in the hospital. And it felt like every other week it was like, you know, oh, she's going to die, she's going to die. And then something would happen and she wasn't going to die. So then I wouldn't tell anybody. And then, you know, it would come close again, and then everything was fine. And it was just such a roller coaster that it was like, why bring this to everybody when we don't know what's going to happen? And then,
was that the thing that was really stopping you from sharing, the fact that it was just so unstable that you didn't know, or was it the embarrassment, or what was it for you that you think prevented you from?
I'm not good at asking for help. I'm not good at feeling weak. I didn't want that. I didn't want pity. I didn't want, maybe there was a little bit of embarrassment.
Yeah.
There's always that stigma, you know, well, you know, she's an addict.
Yeah.
She asked for this.
The judgment.
You know, it's like not that I thought I was going to get it from my friends, you know what I mean? But this wasn't the first time she had ended up in the hospital. You know, she's gotten infections before. She almost lost her arm one time. They said if she had showed up an hour later to the hospital, they would have had to amputate. Like, there was multiple times that she escaped death, I guess you could call it, to the point where it didn't really feel like no way. You know what I mean? Like, she's not going to die. Like, that's not going to happen. So it was kind of like me and my mom were going to deal with it like we always did, and it was going to eventually end, and we wouldn't have to tell anybody.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where we had to tell people.
Can I ask you, what was it like to, you know, to carry the weight of that daily and to try to still be present in your daughter's life? How were you able to do that? Where did you find the strength to be the mother?
I don't know where it comes from. I think once you become a parent, their well-being just kind of trumps everything else.
Okay, just
you know,
supersedes
it's just kind of, you know, we didn't tell my daughter until she was already on hospice. So she didn't know she was sick. She didn't know anything. Still to this day, we've never had the addiction conversation with her.
Okay. So she was unaware.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a part of us that believed she was aware.
Yeah. Kids are pretty smart.
Right.
Yeah.
My daughter's very logical and
She's a
asks a million questions.
Yeah.
She's always been that person. She wants to know every detail about everything. And there'd be times when my sister was in jail for almost a year or in rehab for months or whatever the case may be. There'd be these long periods of time where she wasn't around. And she never asked where she was. She never questioned it. There'd be times when we'd be like, oh, she's away at school, you know, and she never questioned it. So there was a part of us that thought she maybe not knew, but knew not to ask.
Okay.
You know, like knew something was up and maybe she didn't want to know the answer.
Yeah.
But she didn't know until that week when she was on hospice already. And me and her dad talked about it. on whether we thought she should see her or not. That was hard. I felt like I was going to traumatize her regardless.
Mm-hmm.
I was, between a rock and a hard place, because it's let her see her and say goodbye and traumatize the hell out of her, or don't let her see her and traumatize the hell out of her.
No good options.
No, I mean, to even have to tell your, I guess, 11-year-old, that her aunt is dying in general is traumatizing. So me and her dad decided to give her the option to see how she would feel about it. And
Okay.
she chose not to see her.
Okay.
She said she didn't want to see her like that, which I think was still the best option, but she struggles with it. She struggles with not being able to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was extremely hard.
It's beautiful that she knew what was best for her in that moment, though.
Yeah.
At least, in hindsight, everyone might want to do something different, but in the moment, she chose, and that's what she will live with. And that has been my choice when presented with the same, options. I chose not to see people because in my mind, it's like I just want to. My last memory of them, I want them to be something other than that.
Right.
Like I want my last memory to be the best memory. I want it to be the smile or
Right.
whatever it was, throwing football, eating dinner, whatever moment that your daughter and her
Right.
shared last, she gets to have that.
Yeah.
Rather than.
Which I'm glad she chose not to, because, well, my sister was also extremely emotional. And like I said, my daughter was like her favorite person on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we had had her come see her, I don't think my sister could have handled it.
Yeah.
My daughter's kind of morbid, and kind of emotionless sometimes. I think she would have been obviously very emotional about it, but my daughter's also dealt with a lot of death already in her young life.
So she has a stoicism about her.
Yes.
Okay.
So, she was 5 when Rob passed away.
Mm-hmm.
She was 8 when Corey passed away.
Yeah.
So she's dealt with a lot of death, not to mention grandparents and different things. And
Yeah.
so she's kind of got this, way of thinking about death that sometimes makes me sad, but I think it would have been my sister who would have lost it. So in hindsight, I'm glad she chose what she chose, but I do know that she struggles with it.
Yeah.
That's hard for her.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We all struggle with it, Every loss, you and I share the loss of Rob in common. That's the thing that probably bonds us the most, the pain of
Probably.
that. And for me, that still is, it's like yesterday, I have a hard
Yeah.
time talking about it. Don't know, the process. Like, as you traverse the different grief stages, I'm imagining there's some ups, some downs, some highs, some lows. Like, I guess, what do you find solace in knowing, as far as just your sister's presence and like what she meant to you?
Well, the one thing about grief that I feel like nobody told me, you hear about the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
I couldn't name them all, but like anger, sadness,
I don't
all
know
those
either.
ones. There's 5 steps. You know what I mean? It's like the shock, that, and then it's like, then you're bargaining and all these things.
Yeah,
So there's like
reason
right. So there's nobody really tells you that those stages aren't stages. It's not something that happens in order.
Mm-hmm.
And so you are obviously, I was in a shock period I was numb and completely surprised at how much I didn't cry.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was very, a lot of shock in the beginning. A lot of anger, but it's very like, you know, you're shock, then sad, then angry, then you have a good day.
Mm-hmm.
And the good day makes you feel guilty.
Mm.
And then you have the guilt that comes along with not having a sad day, you know?
Yeah.
And then you're back to being angry, and then you're sad again.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the good days are more frequent. You know, it never really goes away, that hole, you know what I mean? It
Yeah, the
never
cycle.
goes anywhere. But I saw like a picture about grief one time where it's like, you know, people think that if the grief is a bubble, you know, the bubble shrinks, but it's just everything else around it gets bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to function and move forward, but the grief is still the same size.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Yeah, absolutely. To get to your good days, were you purposely doing anything or intentionally doing anything to get to your good days? Or on the days when you were landing on good, was it just by chance?
Probably both.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there was anything specific. I was good at distracting myself.
Mm.
I went back to work. I took care of my daughter. I tried to get together with friends or what. I found that I couldn't be still. Being still was always the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if I sat alone in my grief, it was too heavy.
Yeah.
So I kept distracted and I kept it moving. And, you know, people were, you know, begging me not to go back to work yet. And granted, I was off from when it started to when I went back to work. It was probably about a month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I couldn't sit at home. I couldn't be quiet and be with the thought of her.
Have you been able to do that since?
I actually kind of force myself to now.
Yeah.
There's days where me and my mom have talked about it. It's like you're just on the verge. Like I'll talk to her. I'm like, you know, how's your day so far and all that kind of stuff. She's like, I don't know, I'm just on the verge. And I was like, that was me yesterday.
Yeah.
And some days I'm perfectly fine and I could talk about her and laugh about her and all the things. And then there's other days where I just feel like I'm on the verge of tears all day.
Yeah.
And I will put on a song that reminds me of her and I will cry it out. And
What would that song be? If you don't mind sharing.
So there's this artist, James Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know James Arthur?
I don't think so.
He sings that that one song that was like everyone's wedding song a couple years ago. It was like "Say You Won't Let Go." He's like, I don't know. So he's a good artist and he's a former addict.
Okay.
So a lot of his songs, me and her would listen to together, about him being a former addict or about, you know, he sings these beautiful songs that what it's like to love an addict or what it's like to, you know, it's just the artist himself reminds me of her. So anything he sings reminds me of her. But there is this one song I came across not long ago called Safe Inside. And it's literally about, like, call me when you make it home safe because I worry about you.
Mm-hmm. You felt that a lot of the time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I listened to it before I came in.
Yeah. Is it is there a range of emotions when you listen to it? Does it bring you up? Does it bring you down? Because, you know, sometimes when you have things like that happen, like at least me, I listen to songs that like actually make me sad. I guess because I want to feel it and I feel like I need to feel it because it's like,
That's
you
what
know,
it is
you
for
feel
me.
like you're full of it and you just need to get it out of you. And
Yep.
somehow I
have a
need to
Kelly
hear this.
playlist on my phone
Yeah.
of all these like masochistically sad songs.
Yeah.
And,
Pull
you
it
know,
out of you.
right.
Yeah.
Like there's a song called Butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I guess the artist mom maybe was dying of cancer or something. And, you know, she's basically telling her she can let go. So, you know, I have all these like, you know, masochist songs on my phone, but I will put on the playlist when I need to cry it out, when I need to feel her.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that for you. I lost my cousin to suicide actually, and there's a song like Amazing Grace. My aunt sung this at his viewing that we had in our house. We're all standing there holding hands, and anyway, she has a pretty good singer, and I just can't listen to Amazing Grace anymore, ever, anywhere, at any point. Just melt.
Kara sang it at her funeral.
Yeah, yeah. I can't hear that song anymore.
And we all lost it. Like there was not. It was sobbing. Like, well, and I mean, obviously, it was hard for Kara to get through the song too. But it was that song in general that's a hard one.
I love Kara's voice. I love her singing. Thank you, Kara, so much for the song. Appreciate you. You can never sing Amazing Grace around me, ever, ever. I can't handle.
She does a beautiful version of it.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
I didn't know all that. I mean, obviously, no one would share that with me, but I didn't know the details, you know, that in depth. I didn't know the story went on that long.
Of my sister?
Yeah.
Most people didn't know.
Yeah, and I didn't, yeah. And the fact that you're just
most people assumed. It was insane to me how many people didn't ask me how she died.
Yeah.
You know, it was, you know, like everybody just.
You think they assumed it was an overdose? Okay.
I think there's still plenty of people out there that thinks that that's what it was.
Yeah, you know, to be
and I didn't
quite
correct
honest,
them.
Yeah, I thought that too because I didn't know anything.
Well, and that it was a absolutely normal assumption.
Yeah,
I would have assumed it too.
Yeah,
and you know, I didn't volunteer it. You know, I didn't volunteer I wasn't going to put it on Facebook. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to, you know, she was 30 and she was an addict and she died. And I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it was her addiction that killed her. So people weren't far off.
Yeah.
But, you know, so that's why I just was like, I'm not going to correct people or do a PSA about it.
Okay, so can I ask you a question? That assumption that people have, does that make you feel any kind of way? Does it hurt? How does it make you feel?
I understand it.
Yeah.
You know, it was just kind of, she struggled for a really long time. And people knew, you know, it wasn't necessarily talked about, but it wasn't a secret either.
I got you.
So, you know, it wasn't, when I finally was able to put a post up about her, it wasn't a lot of what happened.
Yeah.
You know, was a lot of, oh my God, Steph, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You know, so, which is normal. But when I thought back about it, I was like, you know what's crazy? Like, nobody really asked me how she died. You know what I mean? Like, nobody asked me.
Yeah.
Nobody asked for details. Nobody, you know, and I know a lot of that too is out of respect, I'm sure, but there was this, you know, dark cloud of assumption that that's just what it was. And I don't hold any bad feelings towards anybody for assuming it, because like I said, I would have assumed it too. And ultimately that is what killed her. But it wasn't an overdose kind of situation. It was very long and drawn out and
traumatic.
Very.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I had no clue that you were battling that. And honestly, the fact that you're here, like, to me, like I say it again, your story is literally like just one of perseverance and triumph and all the things that it takes to get here, because, you know, it's so visceral and so real. That's like, and you just don't know what to do. There is no book, there's no playbook, there's no roadmap. No one ever tells you. It's not like when you're younger, even though it's such a it's a part of everyone's life. Like we all lose someone. Everyone's going to lose people. We're all going to love someone. All the things are going to happen, but no one tells you how to deal with that. Like, hey, as you get older, you're going to
Right.
start to lose people, and this is how you deal with that loss, or this is where we go for here, or call this person, or speak to this person, or this friend can do that, or, like
Well,
there's just
and
nothing.
like we said, everybody deals with it completely differently,
Yeah.
and it's going to hit people differently. Just in, like, my mom wanted to be alone, after the funeral. She wanted to go home. She wanted to be by herself. She wanted to be alone. She didn't want to be the center of attention anymore. She didn't want to be hugged anymore. She didn't want any of that.
Yeah.
Me, on the other hand, had every friend I have over my house, and we drank our faces off because I needed to be surrounded by the people who loved me the most, and I needed to drink my feelings for a little while. And I didn't want to be alone. And everybody's like, "Where's your mom? Why is she not here? We need to go get. She shouldn't be by herself." I'm like, "She wants to be alone."
Yeah.
Like,
give her that.
give her that. Give her that respect that she wants to be by herself. She wants to cry it out alone. She, buried her daughter today. Like, give that to her.
Yeah.
And then me, I wanted the distraction. I wanted to be with the people I love. I wanted to laugh and pretend like it wasn't happening, and my friends gave that to me.
Yeah. So that's how you grieve. You and your mother grieve differently.
Yep.
How do you and your mother support each other now? How do you show up for each other?
We spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
I probably talk to my mom 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
She lives right down the street, and we always have been extremely close. But she calls me a lot, having her moments,
Yeah.
and then she's extremely apologetic, and I tell her I'm supposed to be the one she calls for those. And she will cry it out, and she just needs me to talk her through it, and I do, and that's what happens, and I've learned that about myself too, is I've gotten better at not necessarily asking for help, but leaning on people. In the beginning, I wasn't good at that.
Yeah.
I'm still not great at it.
Yeah.
When I have my moments, I do it by myself.
Yeah.
I'm usually alone in my car, or, away from my daughter or anybody else. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
uncomfortable for
Yeah.
for me, for other people.
Yeah.
Like,
Everyone,
it's
you're
like,
not alone.
right. So,
Yeah.
if your friend's sitting there sobbing, it's like, you're kind of like, okay, like,
Yeah.
you don't know what to say. You don't know
Yeah.
how, like, I don't ever want to put somebody in that position. I don't want to be put in that position. I don't want to hear what they have to say. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
when I have my moments, I'm good at putting up my wall and pretending like I'm good. And then I have my moments alone. I did learn throughout the process of who to call,
Yeah.
who not to call,
Yeah. Yeah,
who,
absolutely.
and it's not anything bad on specific people. I just mean, there's certain people that I could call and I could cry it out, and they kind of just knew what not to say and just let me have my minute. There was people I knew who to call that instantly understood I needed to be distracted, that I needed them to talk me out of it, talk about something stupid. Let's talk about the Eagles and how they suck right now, or,
Yeah.
let's, and then there's other people that, were also extremely emotional, or also extremely, if I needed the, to cry it out with somebody,
Yeah.
I knew who to call.
Yeah, the blanket.
So but a lot of the time it was just me by myself, because that's the way I prefer it.
Yeah, that's how you grieved. If you could, I guess, tell people, you don't have to tell people because everyone's different, but as far as supporting, you got the support from your friends that you wanted, and you picked who was there for what, like no one knows what to do or what to say or what not to say. Like, is there anything that you would tell people to not say? Like, has anyone said anything to you you're just like, I really could have did without that?
Without hearing it.
Yeah.
Well, you get a lot of the, she's in a better place, or,
Ugh.
it's like,
I never say that.
it's just, it's the cliche thing to say.
Yeah.
So I try not to like blame people for
Uh-huh.
saying it, but I mean,
It's hard.
she is okay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
If you
you
say
know,
so.
I take a lot of solace in knowing that she's not here struggling anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. You know that for a
that I
fact.
know that for a fact.
Yeah.
She's not here struggling anymore.
Yeah.
That is something that's very extreme for me. But I think, like we said, everybody grieves differently. So your best bet is just to ask.
Yeah.
You know, like, what do you need? Is there anything you need? You know what I mean? Do you want to be left alone? Do you want someone to talk to you?
Yeah.
You know, like
You're right.
I have one friend that I tell her all the time. I was like, I feel like you just kind of know. You know, like we'd be in the middle of, you know, it could be a couple weeks ago, and we're in the middle of a party, and I'm having a great time, and you know, like whatever. And she looks at me and she's like, I see you, and I love you, and call me later if you want to talk. Like she just knows, and I'm like, what? You're like a sorcerer, and but it's when you know when someone's faking it,
Yeah.
you know, and it's somebody like me who lost her only sister 90% of the time. I'm faking it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just knowing, you know, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, are you okay? Do you want to talk? Let's go talk. Are you cool? Like,
Yeah.
it's not any of that. It's just, I see you and I love you. Call me if you want to talk.
That's amazing that you have that connection with your friends, you know?
Yeah. And all my friends are like that. You know, they all have their own special place where I know who they are in the, you know, in my grief process.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
You know who to go to.
right. And it's not, none of them are better than the other. You know what I mean? In the way that things happen. Because in a grief process, you need a little bit of all of that. You need the distraction. You need the goofy friend. You need the, you know, the one that's going to pull the cry out of you when you need it. And, you know, you need all that kind of stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, just ask, you know, like you have the motherly friends who, you know, want to clean your house or, you know, little things like that. But then there's, you know, sometimes it might be overwhelming, you know, the always asking what they need, always wanting to overdo it you know, so it's the best thing I can say is just ask.
Yeah, just that simple, how can I support you?
Yeah, how do you want to be supported?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what do you want to be left alone? Do you want someone to talk to? Do you, you know,
Yeah.
what is it that you need? You know,
Yeah.
because my mom would have said, I want to be left alone. I would have been like, I want to go get a drink, or I want to, you know, be out in public, or, you know, like I want to, like, we all grieve differently. So you can't expect to treat this grieving person the same way you would treat that one. So just ask.
Yeah. Can I ask another question? Can you describe at all for you what is the bond of sisterhood feel like? You have any words for that? Because you know, like I have a brother, and it's such like a strong feeling. You know, it's almost hard to describe, but you feel it. You know, like the feeling is stronger than words, I think.
It very much is, and it's sad to say it this way, but I didn't realize how strong it was until she was gone. I didn't expect to feel so lonely.
Yeah, like a
And
piece of
I
you.
have so many people in my life. I have my daughter. I have, you know, like I have family. I have all my friends. I have a ginormous group of friends. But I feel very alone without her.
Yeah.
It's very weird. Like it's, you know, I'm like hyper aware now that eventually it's just gonna be me. You know, it's like we get older, our parents get older, and you know, things like that. And you know, my dad left a long time ago, but he passed away probably like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago or something. So he's not here anymore. And then it was just me and my mom and my sister, and now my sister's gone. It's just me and my mom. And the bond you have with a sibling, it's visceral.
Yeah.
It's almost tangible.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's, I don't
yeah.
know how to explain. it feels like a cord was cut,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like there's this weird actual physical, like, something's missing now.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, they say that twins have those weird feelings too, and that makes sense. They were, you know, whatever, but I think there is something very similar to something like that when it comes to siblings, when you share blood and life,
Yeah. Experience.
all that.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's something that makes me sad that my daughter doesn't have any siblings.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that really made me that sad until I lost mine. And you realize that it's something that is kind of needed, you know?
Yeah.
Like, being an only child's not the worst thing on the planet, but, you know, when you get to bond with somebody like that, you know, you can have a bond with a parent, you can have a bond with cousins and whatever, but when you have a sibling, there's nothing really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree fully. I was wondering if you felt the same way. I put you on the spot as far as explaining it, but I don't even think I can explain it honestly.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's, unless you have, you know, I mean, there's plenty of people that don't have the greatest relationship with siblings and, you know, all the things, but when you have a close relationship with a sibling, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it. I hope people realize it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're emotionally tethered to these people in a way that's like so tangible and so real that
And very
it
unique.
seems like
There's
you're
nobody
physically
else.
connected,
Right.
like you're joined or something, but clearly you're not, but it definitely feels like you are. And then I would imagine to lose someone, like the hole, the space, the void that leaves, that missing piece. Do you think, I mean, I don't even know if you would ever want to, yeah, of course you'd want to fill a void, of course, but
Yeah. Not
you think-
necessarily fill it, you know, because
not replace, but
we're right.
yeah.
So it's,
Just fill that empty space that you feel that you carry with you.
yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the void.
Yeah. Right now.
Now I do.
Yeah.
I don't want it gone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's something that reminds me of her.
Yeah. That space was for her. That was her space.
That was her space, and it's gonna stay there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I keep pictures of her everywhere. I keep, you know, I mean, her ashes are in this necklace,
Oh, really?
and I, you know, have Christmas ornament that I put her ashes in and made them for people who loved her. And, you know, my mom has her ashes in a necklace, and my daughter, you know, so it's,
Her spirit lives on.
and I have these little jars that I put her ashes in, and, you know, I bring them with me everywhere I go.
Yeah.
So I, you know, went to Mexico like 6 months ago, and I brought her with me, and I put them in the ocean. And then I just took my daughter to Florida for cheerleading, and I put her there too. And anywhere I go, upstate New York, we went to the Finger Lakes. I put her there too. So it's my way of, you know, she didn't get to see these places. We didn't get to go to these places, so I'm going to bring her with me. And it's something that makes me feel better. There was a trip that I went on for my birthday, like right before she got sick, and I remember her being like, "I want to go," and I remember just being like, "Oh, well, you know, not this time,"
Yeah.
you know, because there was a part of me that thought maybe she was messing up again.
Yeah.
And this was not, there was an embarrassment that was along with it. There was
Yeah.
worry that she was going to screw it up somehow, or she was going to, you know what I mean? It's like,
Of course.
so the guilt behind that was really hard, that I didn't have that trip with her before she died.
Do you still carry that guilt?
I think the guilt will never really go away, but I have more compassion for myself now, knowing that the guilt may be there, but I was right.
Yeah.
So, you know, the guilt is always going to be there for all of it, for the being mean to her or cutting her out of my daughter's life, or, you know, just the different things. But
Things you felt like you had to do.
But the compassion is also there of, I know I did what was right, what needed to be done. Yeah, I don't know. I think just giving myself a little grace from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And accept the consequences and find ways to move forward, you know, and be present in the lives of the people that are still here with us today.
Yeah. I think it just, you know, the one thing about grief that I will say, it gets worse.
Yeah.
People think that the beginning's the hardest when it first happens, and, you know, all the things, and the shock and the having to learn how to live with the person without the person and all that. You know, they always say the first year is the hardest, the first Christmas, the first birthday without them, all the things. Yeah, that's all extremely hard, but it gets worse. The having to move forward without them.
Yeah.
And feeling like everyone else forgot.
You feel like you're letting go.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, you know, it's been a year and a half, and I cry more now than I did before. And, you know, it's like the first 6 months you're in this walking coma, you know, zombie-like, you know, situation, you know, getting back to being a parent and doing all these things and distractions and blah, blah, blah. It's like, once that year mark comes up, it's like you're just now starting to really fully deal with it.
Yeah,
And
just like come out from under it.
right. So the one thing I can say is, you know, check on your friends.
Yeah.
You know, they might not be great.
Yeah.
And I think it gets to a point where people think they don't want to ask. They don't want to bring it up. They don't, you know, they think enough time has passed where they don't want to bring it up, or they don't want to, you know, it's like taboo. Like, I don't want to upset you, or, you know, all the things, but it's like, right. People just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you lose somebody that close to you, whether it be a sibling or a child or a parent or whatever the case may be, it's like, that shit don't go away. You know, it doesn't just.
It's part of who you are forever.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's hard. You know, I think, you know, you get this, you don't want to talk to people about it because you're worried they're going to be like, come on now. It's been a year and a half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not that anybody would actually say that to you, but that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, some
you know,
apprehension.
It's like, right. Like, I can't call anybody crying now because it's been a year and a half. Like,
yeah.
But, yeah.
It sounds like you have a good support system around you, and like you said, you know who to pick, and, you know, the people that show up for you, and now it's, you know, just about trying to find a way to make sure that you show up for yourself and check off some of the things that may be holding you back along your process, as far as reaching out to people, or, you know, just making sure that you do the things that need doing.
Yeah.
Along the way to healing, and that you're not just storing it and you look up 3 years from now and you're in the same place you were because you didn't deal with it at all. So
yeah, I'd like to get back into therapy, and, you know, I'm a big advocate for therapy.
Yeah.
I had been going to therapy for a couple years before COVID hit. And then, you know, COVID kind of shut all that down, and I haven't found a therapist. I couldn't go back to my therapist, which I think has been stopping me from going back because I dealt with a lot of Kelly shit with her,
Yeah.
and she doesn't even know she died, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like, I kind of don't want to start over with a new therapist. Like, I want to find her
Yeah.
and be like, oh, yeah, remember my sister that I complained about every time I was here?
Yeah.
Yeah. My biggest fear that we talked about happened, you know? So there's a part of me that's holding out for hoping I could find her because she doesn't work at the practice that I was going to before. And of course, they won't give me her information. So I don't know. I think it's you know, I'm just going to have to find a new therapist because I definitely need one. But
You're still very early in the grieving, I believe. Because, like I said, my cousin died, I don't know, he was 20, it could have been almost 20 years ago now. And I could still, like, some days wake up and feel it like it was yesterday. You know, like you said, it really never does go away, you know.
it doesn't.
At least you know that. Like, at no point ever will you not feel that loss.
Yeah, no.
Like, it's always going to be with you. And the only thing you can do is find a way to deal with it, you know, and how to live through it and with it.
Yeah, my mom said something to me. I forget when that was, a week or two ago. She was like, I just don't want anyone to forget her. And that's hard because you know, when somebody that was your whole world dies, it's like she wasn't necessarily everybody else's whole world, you know? So you have this fear that people are going to forget about her, you know? And it's like, I still hang her stocking. I still, you know, put stuff in it. You know, it's like, I don't know if that's healthy or not, you know what I mean? But her, you know, Christmas stockings hanging, and, you know, I don't physically go out and like buy her presents because that would be weird. But it's like, you know, I wear her clothes and I, you know, honor her, and I try to bring her with me and have something of her with me at all times. And, you know, we have her dog.
Yeah.
Me and my mom take care of her dog.
My thought process behind that is, in the beginning, when you don't really know what to do, if it feels good to you, do it, you know, because that's the biggest thing. Like, you can't go throughout your day or even wake up if you just don't feel good, you know, so you have to do something. So, you know, you lean on whatever you have to lean on to get forward. I mean, obviously you don't want to lean on vices and things of that nature, but, you know, the good things, you know, not the bad things. But also this, I think that by you doing this ensures that her memory lives on forever, you know.
Absolutely.
And you stepping out here and shedding light and telling people your story, she lives on forever through you, through this. And I hope that this here can be a step in your journey towards healing.
Thank you. Yeah, I want people to know that addiction is not their whole personality. It's not everything, you know. It's hard because, you know, people have these awful things to say about addicts, and you know, there's always the debate on whether it's a disease or a choice or a this or a that, and it's
happening regardless.
She was my favorite person, you know, and addiction took her.
Yeah.
You know, she wasn't addiction. Addiction happened to her. She was funny and kind, and, you know.
And you loved her.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just, I hope people can see past it, see past the things that they do when they're deep into the addiction. And, you know, my sister told me one time, she was like, Steph, there's a good 10 years of my life I don't remember.
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't remember stealing from my purse. She doesn't remember the things she said. She doesn't remember any of that stuff. It's like it physically didn't happen. So it's never a conscious thing for them to want to hurt somebody, and just remember who they were before.
Yeah, addiction just gripped them.
Yep. So, you know.
Yeah, I love that. We are, you know, we are not our choices or our decisions. We're more than that. And it can happen to all of us. We're all human. We're all susceptible to it. Like, you and your sister share DNA. I imagine there's some similarities in personality, you know?
Yep.
And for whatever reason, you went that way and she went that way.
Yep.
And that's just life.
It's just
the way that it ended up. It could literally be anyone. Like you said, there's probably almost every single person on the planet has been touched somehow by addiction.
Yeah, I imagine so by now at this point.
Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody or whatever.
Yeah.
It's some families are worse than others, and it's sad and generational, and it's hard.
Yeah, everyone's afflicted. It a lot of times you hear people talk about it being people that are like impoverished areas or this or that, but it's everyone. No one's immune. Like everyone's getting caught up in it.
Mm-hmm. I knew plenty of extremely rich, successful people that maybe got into a car accident, maybe needed painkillers, maybe ended up on heroin because of that. And it's addiction. It's not, it doesn't pick and choose. I mean, there obviously are going to be more access in maybe certain places in certain areas and whatever the case may be. But this kind of thing could happen to anybody. And it didn't make her a piece of shit person. It didn't make her bad, or it was a terrible thing. And I miss her. And I love her. And, I hope she can hear me.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Again, to me, your story, resonates because I have a brother, and, this could have easily have been my story, so I appreciate you so much for coming out. And,
well, thank you
like
for
I
having
said,
me.
Hopefully this is another step in the journey.
Yep. And thank you for what you're doing, putting out the stories, and, everybody has some kind of trauma, hearing other people's stories. Maybe they're not alone,
Absolutely. And all of our stories have value, there's no story too great or too small,
Yep.
Thank you very much, Steph.
Well, thank you very much, Sean.
Alrighty. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to The Awakened Avoidant. We hope our convo has provided you with insight, inspiration, and healing energy. As you go about your week, let's continue to work together to heal ourselves and our community. Stay safe and continue to spread healing vibes wherever you go. Catch a new episode Wednesday weekly on all platforms.